Work begins at Tsavo. When I landed at Mombasa, I fully expected to encounter many trials and hardships while engaged in building the railway through an inhospitable and savage territory. I anticipated engineering difficulties, perils from sunstroke and fevers, a possible scarcity of food and water, but never for a moment did I realize that the African wilderness held in its mysterious recesses two prowling demons who looked upon myself and my workmen as a sort of manna sent down from heaven for their special delectation. All other difficulties were as nothing compared to the terrible toll of human sacrifice exacted nightly by these savage monsters who made Tsavo their headquarters and gave to that district an evil repute which lasts to this day. Mombasa, the starting point of the Uganda Railway, is an old Arab city fringed with palms and washed by the warm waters of the Indian Ocean. Up to the time of my arrival in tropical Africa, I had pictured to myself a desolate shore, sandy, rock-strewn, with the scorching sun burning up everything beneath it, but my first view of Mombasa gave me a pleasant surprise. Green verdure abounded as far as the eye could reach, while dazzlingly white, flat-roofed houses peeped out between tall coconut and spreading mango trees. Waving palms and huge baobabs forming the most delightful and beautiful picture, framed against a dark background of well-wooded, verdant hills. The old town was bathed in brilliant sunshine and was reflected dreamily in the motionless sea. At the time of my arrival, railhead had just reached Tsavo. About 130 miles from the coast, here it was found that a river, fed from the everlasting snows of Mount Kilimanjaro, surged across the track. The river ran in the center of a wide and deep depression, worn away in the course of ages, and this rift had to be spanned by means of a bridge. I was deputied to build this bridge and to carry out all the engineering works in the district. After spending a few days at Mombasa, I set out for my headquarters. For 20 miles or so after leaving the coast, the railway wound steadily upwards through the beautifully wooded, park-like country, and on looking back out the carriage window, I could every now and then obtain lovely views of Mombasa, while beyond the Indian Ocean sparkled in the glorious sunshine as far as the eye could reach. Soon, however, the whole character of the country changed. Green, smiling, well-wooded uplands gave place to wilderness covered with the bushy scrub and stunted trees, and carpeted with a layer of fine red dust which penetrated into every nook and cranny. Towards dusk we reached Tsavo, and I felt somewhat depressed by the desolation and loneliness of my new surroundings. I slept that night in a little palm hut which had been built by some previous traveler, and which was fortunately unoccupied for the time being. It was rather broken down and dilapidated, not even possessing a door, and as I lay down on my narrow camp bed, I could see the stars twinkling through the broken roof. I little knew then what adventures awaited me in this neighborhood, and if I had realized that at that very time 2 savage brutes were prowling round, seeking whom they might devour, I hardly think I should have slept so peacefully. The next morning I was up betimes, eager to make my acquaintance with my new surroundings. My first impression on coming out of the hut was that I was hemmed in on all sides with a dense growth of impenetrable jungle. On scrambling to the top of a little hill close at hand, I found that the whole country, as far as I could see, was covered with low, stunted trees, thick undergrowth, and wait-a-bit thorns. The only clearing, indeed, appeared to be where the narrow track for the railway had been cut. This interminable nyika, or wilderness of whitish and leafless dwarf trees, presented a ghastly and sun-stricken appearance. Here and there, a ridge of dark red, heat-blistered rock jutted out above the jungle and added its rugged barrenness to the dreariness of the picture. Away to the northeast stretched the unbroken line of the Ndungu escarpment, while far off to the south I could just catch a glimpse of the snow-capped top of towering Kilimanjaro. The one redeeming feature of the neighborhood was the river from which Tsavo takes its name. This is a swiftly flowing stream, always cool, always running, the latter being an exceptional attribute in this part of East Africa. The fringe of lofty green trees along with its banks formed a welcome relief to the general monotony of the landscape. When I had thus obtained a rough area of the neighborhood, I returned to my hut and began in earnest to make preparations for my stay in this outlandish place. The stores were unpacked, and my boys pitched the tent in a little clearing house close to the shelter where I had slept the night before and not far from the main camp. Railhead had at this time just reached the western side of the river, and some thousands of Indian coolies and other workmen were encamped there. As the line had to be pushed on with all speed, a diversion had been made and the river crossed by means of a temporary bridge. My principal work was to erect the permanent structure and to complete all the other works for a distance of 30 miles on either side of Tsavo. I accordingly made a survey of what had to be done and sent my requisition for labor, tools, and materials to the headquarters at Kilindini. Of course, the natives of this part of Africa knew nothing about the technical work, or indeed work of any kind, save carrying a load on the head, so the great majority of our artisans and laborers had to be imported from India. In a short time, workmen and supplies came pouring in, and the noise of hammers and sledges, drilling and blasting echoed merrily throughout the district. The first victims. Unfortunately, this happy state of affairs did not continue for long, and our work was soon interrupted in a rude and startling manner. I had been only a few days at Tsavo when one or two workmen mysteriously disappeared, and I was told that they had been carried off from their tents.